All right, let's start off on number 1 here. So we're going to factor this. So I see that A is 1. And so anytime A is 1, and when I say A, it's just the number in front of the n squared, and then B is the number in front of the regular one, and then C is the number out back. Anytime A is 1, what that means is that we don't need a box for this. We can just do the X. So I'm just going to do the X here, and we're going to do A times C up top, thinking about two numbers that multiply to negative 21 and add to 4. So I'm going to break down 21. So 1 times 21. Let's see, 3 times 7, and that's it. So 3 and 7 will work here. If I make the 3 negative, that's going to multiply to make negative 21 and add to make 4. So I can just write this as n minus 3 and then n plus 7. So that's my answer. If you want to check your work on this, you can always multiply with a box here. And so this would give you n squared minus 3n, 7n, and negative 21. And so if you're going to combine like terms, then you get 4n minus 21. And so that checks out because that was the original question we were trying to do there. So that just means this is the correct answer. All right, next up, number 4. So this one, once again, A is 1, and so that means we don't need a box on this one. So we're just going to think of two numbers that multiply to 100 and add to negative 20. So it seems like 10 and 10 to me if you make them both negative. And so it's n minus 10 and just n minus 10 again. If you want to double check this with the box, you always can. Oops, I would do an outside in to double check it. So then you get n squared minus 10n minus 10n, and then plus 100. So that gives you n squared minus 20n plus 100, so that does check out. So this is my answer. However, I see that the answer, they wrote it like this, n minus 10 squared, which is another correct way to write it, because remember, if we have n minus 10 squared, we would write it twice. All right, next up, number 6 here. I first kind of checked the GCF, but I see there's no number these can all divide by, so I'm just going to move on. I do see that A is 7, which means I'm going to need the box here. So we can actually, we're going to draw our X, and we'll do the box. So already in the box, I can put 7x squared right there, and then I can put 4 down there. So those are coming from the thing I'm trying to factor here. Then A times C up top is going to be 28, and then 29 on bottom. And so I think this one's pretty easy to see is 28 and 1, multiplying to 28 and adding to 29. So those go here and here. And I put them with an X because they should add up to this middle term, which you can see that they do. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the GCF going this way. So the GCF between 7 and 28 is 7, and then they both have an X, so I'm going to put an X. The GCF here, it looks like there's nothing that's a GCF, and so whenever there's nothing, you can just put a 1. And then we always do the sign, the plus or minus of the closer box, so this one's going to be a plus. So now I'm going to do the GCFs going this way. So 7 and 1 have nothing in common, but I can take out an X. And then 28 and 4, I can take out a 4 and make that a positive. We can double check this by multiplying it back in. So these two should multiply to make 7x squared, 28x, 1x, and then 4. So that's all good. So then our answer is just these two parentheses here. So I put 7x plus 1 and x plus 4 in any order. All right, next up here, same idea. I do have this A value of not 1, it's 4, and so I'm going to need the box here. And so I'm going to make the X and the box. So once again here, I'll have 4x squared right there and 7 right there. I don't know the other two yet, but I know it's got to add up to 16x. So I'm going to go to my X for this. So we do A times C here, which is 28, and then B is 16. So I'm going to think about what makes 28. So that would be 1 and 28, obviously. 2 and 14. Oh, and you know what? 2 and 14 is going to work. So I'll put 2x and 14x so that they add up to this middle term. Now I'll do GCF going this way. Will be 2x. And then 2 and 7 don't have anything, so I'm going to put a plus 1. And then GCF going this way would be 2x. And then GCF going this way would be a plus 7. And just double check, make sure everything multiplies back in. So this gives me the 4x squared, the 2x, the 14x, and the 7. So I'm going to write my answer, 2x plus 1, 2x plus 7. All right, next up, number 10. It says we need to GCF on this one first. So I see that all of these are divisible by 3, so I'm going to take a 3 out front. So then I have 7n squared plus n minus 6. And so I see here my a is 7, and so I'm going to need the box here. If I would have GCF'd and then I have a 1 there, then I don't need the box anymore. But since I still have the 7 there, I'm going to need the box for the 7n squared. And then I'm going to put negative 6 back here. And then I don't know what the other two are yet, but I know they need to add up to 1n. So I'm going to go ahead and do the x here. And this is my a, b, and c now. So my a times c is going to be negative 42. And then my b is going to be 1. And I already can think of, for 42, that 7 and 6 that I multiplied together, that is going to be my two numbers if I make the 6 negative. So I'm going to have 7n and negative 6n. And that adds up to that 1n right in the middle there. So I'm going to do common factors going this way. This is just n. And this will be plus 1. And then going the other direction is 7n. And then these ones will be minus 6. And that one's a negative because the closest box is negative. Just double check here, make sure everything multiplies back in. So that gives you negative 6, negative 6n, 7n squared, and 7n. And so my answer then will be 7n minus 6 times n plus 1. Oh, wait, but I did forget this 3 right there, which you don't want to forget. So since I had that, took it out, the GCF at the beginning, I just keep it out front there. All right, next up here, I'm just going to do the greatest common factor. So we're just going to do GCF. So what can these both divide by? They can both divide by an 8, and then the smallest exponent is v to the third, so that's what I'm going to take out. So then this one, if I divide 8 by 8, that's 1. And then if I have 4 v's and I take out 3, then I only have 1 left. And then the next piece is 24 divided by 8 is 3, and then I took out all the v's, so that's just that. They're probably going to write this, though, without the 1, so that's fine. We'll just write it like that. All right, more GCF here. So what can all these numbers divide by? I would say 8. And then our smallest exponent is n to the 9th. So then I would put 5n squared. And then we would have 4n there. And then just 1 right there. The 8 divided by 8 is 1. And then I took out all of the n's. So then if you double check this, you can go ahead and multiply it back in. Just to check your work. And so I got 40n to the 11th, 32n to the 10th. And then this one is needed to give us that 8n to the 9th. So that does check out, and that means that this is actually my answer. All right, next up here, we're going to factor these by grouping. So I'm going to group these two together and these two. And then we'll just GCF out of each group. So this first group, I can take out 5p squared. And that'll leave me with, let's see, 2p and then 3. And then this group, I can take out an 8. And that'll leave me with 2p plus 3 as well. So then I just put 1 parentheses for the stuff outside, and then 1 parentheses for the stuff inside, and then I'm done. You can always check this, though, by multiplying it back together with a box if you want. So this gives me 10p to the third, 16p, 15p squared, and then 24. So you can see that all of those are right here. These 4 terms, no like terms, and so it would just give me that original question, so that means my answer checks out. All right, next up here, same thing, factoring by grouping. So the first group, I can take out 2r squared, and it leaves me with 4r plus 5. The second group, it looks like I can't take out anything. Anytime that happens, you're either going to take out a 1 or a negative 1. Since this third term is negative, I'm going to take out a negative 1, and that's going to change it to positive 4r and positive 5. So then I have 2r squared minus 1 times 4r plus 5, and I'm done. You can still check your work, though. If you get 2r squared minus 1, 4r plus 5, you get 8r to the third, you get 10r squared, you get negative 4r, and you get negative 5. All right, next up here, we're going to find the product. Now, whenever this is written as squared, that means we're going to write it twice. And so then you can either FOIL or use the box. So you get 4a minus 2, 4a minus 2. So then you get 16a squared, negative 8a, and then positive 4. So now you can just combine like terms. And you get negative 16a and then plus 4. The negative 16a came from combining these two, and you're done. All right, last up, number 22 here. We're going to do a 3 by 2 box. So I'll put the negative 2b squared minus b minus 2, and b minus 1. So this will be negative 2b to the third. You kind of think of this like this is a 1 right there, and you're multiplying the numbers in front and adding the exponents. So this will be negative 1b squared. This will be negative 2b. This will be positive 2b squared. This will be positive b, and then positive 2. Now we'll combine like terms, so negative 2b to the third doesn't have a like term. Positive 2 and negative 1 make positive 1b squared. Positive 1 and negative 2 make negative 1b, and then the plus 2 doesn't have anybody to combine with.